Dear learners, I welcome you all to this course on understanding human rights. As you all know that human rights as a subject of study has become quite popular these days. But it is more than a subject of study. Human rights is beyond a course to be taught and learned. It is an ideal to cherish, accept, respect, celebrate, claim and reclaim and practice in our daily lives. So the purpose of this course is not only to explain the concepts of human rights, but it is also one of the purposes of this course is to sensitize about human rights and how these human rights are promoting international peace and security and why they are so much essential for maintaining peace and order in the society. You will find that there is already acknowledgement by the United Nations and other international organizations that human rights education or inclusion of human rights in the academic, in the curricula is essential, necessary for all the countries, because if human rights are being taught or if human rights included in the syllabus, they are going to make us better individual, more informed individual. So that is why you will find here the World Conference of Human Rights in the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action recognized the significance of human rights education and stated that human rights education, training, and public information were essential for the promotion and achievement of stable and harmonious relations among communities and for fostering mutual understanding, tolerance, and peace. So that's why this course becomes important, because you see the World Conference on Human Rights is also recognizing this fact, and it is being mentioned in the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action that the human rights education is necessary for fostering mutual understanding, tolerance, and peace. It also recommended that a state should direct education towards the full development of the human personality and the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It called on all states and institutions to include human rights, humanitarian law, democracy, and rule of law as subjects in the curricula of all learning institutions, informal and non in informal and non-formal settings. So this has been also recognized that these things, that is human rights, humanitarian law, democracy, and rule of law, they must be taught in the as subjects in the curricula. Pursuant to the suggestion of the World Conference, the United Nations General Assembly declared 1995, the decade of 1995 to 2004, as the UN Declaration for Human Rights Education. The office of, this was the time Aligarh Muslim University where I'm teaching. It has been one of the institutions that was selected for offer MA course, that is a master degree course in human rights. And the Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University, uh, has master degree and PhD program in human rights. You see the significance of the course. If you want to understand, then we have to go to the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, which highlights the significance of human rights education in these words. Human rights can only be achieved through an informed and continued demand by people for their protection. You see, what is being emphasized, that vigilant citizenship is needed in all the countries, and that is why we pointed out in the very beginning that human rights are not only, human rights is not only a course of study, but it is to be claimed and reclaimed every day. Otherwise, and that is being recognized by the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights as well. You see that human rights can only be achieved through an informed and continued demand by people for their protection. Human rights education promotes values, beliefs, and attitudes that encourage all individuals to uphold their own rights and those of others. It develops an understanding of everyone's common responsibility to make human rights a reality in each community. This is the significance of human rights education, and you can understand the significance of this course of study that we are offering. The office of the office of the Commission for Human Rights also mentioned that human rights education constitutes an essential contribution to the long-term prevention of human rights abuses, which is very common and universal, that human rights are violated every day. So, human rights education constitutes an essential contribution to the long-term prevention of human rights abuses and represents an important investment in the endeavor to achieve a just society in which all human rights of all persons are valued and respected. So that is why you see that human rights education, understanding human rights, discussing human rights, deliberating upon the human rights, these all are important because they are going to sensitize us about our rights and also about responsibility to respect the rights of others. It further maintains human rights education constitutes an essential contribution. That again, it has been repeated. So, human rights are important from this perspective. Then, the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights highlights the significance of human rights and proclaims. Why I am citing this preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that is UDHR. It was adopted on 10 December 1948, and since then, 10 December is celebrated as International Human Rights Day. UDHR was declared as Magna Carta of Mankind. It was declared as the Magna Carta of Mankind, and the United Nations itself declared that it is the common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. This is such an important document. And what this declaration is saying in its preamble, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. So human rights becomes, the recognition of the concept of human rights becomes a precondition for what? It becomes the foundation of freedom, justice, peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of common people. So, this is the highest aspiration of common people, rather the most basic demand of all the people in the world. Whereas it is essential, if man is to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort, it's a warning as well. So, whereas what the UDHR is proclaiming in its preamble, whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. So it becomes the responsibility of the state to protect human rights by making laws to protect human rights, and also developing institutional mechanism. Effective implementation of the rights are also important. So, after these introductory remarks, we are going to discuss the meaning of human rights. Human rights are legitimate claims of all people, irrespective of religion, race, language, color, sex, or nationality. All individuals are entitled to human rights by virtue of being human. So what has been recognized? First of all, what is to be understood? That human rights are legitimate claims. They are not concession given by the state or society or by the authorities. It is the legitimate claims of all individuals, all human beings, and they should be available to all the people irrespective of caste, creed, sex, place of birth, nationality, gender, etc. And all individuals are entitled to human rights by virtue of being human. That is the only ground. This ground is enough that human beings are there, so they will be having rights. And what is the significance? That human rights differentiate us from the animal kingdom. I'm not using the term animal kingdom in a derogatory sense. In the sense it is being used that in the animal kingdom you'll find the rule is might is right. The governing principle of the animal kingdom is might is right. But in the human society it should not be there. Anarchy and disorder cannot be afforded by us. So that is why the recognition of the rights, the respect for rights, our duty to respect the rights of others, the state's responsibility to protect the rights of the people, that is important to promote peace and order in the society. So that is why, the rights, if they are available, if they are granted, if they are given, if they are properly implemented, they are going to make us more, they are going to make us better human beings, better citizen, and we can develop our potentials, our personalities to the fullest extent. Like any other social science concept, there is no agreement on the meaning, definition, nature, and content of human rights. We will try to understand the meaning of human rights in the light of definitions offered by experts of the subject. There are many definitions of human rights in the available literature. Some of these definitions are discussed here. So, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, human rights are norms that aspire to protect all people everywhere from severe political, legal, and social abuses. So, you see that human rights are universal because human rights are norms that aspire to protect all people everywhere from severe political, legal, and social abuses. According to Harold J. Lasky, rights are those conditions of social life without which no man can seek in general to be himself at his best. So it means best possible development of the personality and potential of individual is not possible about those conditions which we are terming as human rights. So that is why Harold J. Lasky, an important political philosopher of the 20th century, is saying that rights are those conditions of social life without which no man can seek in general to be himself at his best. Ernest Barker states, rights are the external conditions necessary for the greatest possible development of the capacities of the personality. So again, you see that Ernest Barker is also saying same thing, that certain external conditions are required. They are necessary, which is to be provided, of course, by the state. Because in the absence of those external conditions, the greatest possible development of the capacities of the personality will not be possible. So that is why it becomes the responsibility of the state to provide those external conditions. They are, of course, human rights. According to Wilde, rights are reasonable claims to freedom. They are reasonable claims to freedom in the exercise of certain activities. So we have been emphasizing that rights are not concessions given by the state. So rights are reasonable claims to freedom in the exercise of certain activities. Bernard Bosanquet says a right is a claim recognized by society. So what is a right? First of all, a right is a claim recognized by society and enforced by the state. So for example, the claim that we are the stakeholder in the affairs of the state, then the political rights will be recognized. So the first of all, the claim is to be made. During the days of monarchy, it was not possible because at that time the hereditary monarchy used to be there, and any kind of claim of rights against the king or the monarch was not possible. So that is why the rights are the result of a long struggle. And this is the reason that you'll find what is being emphasized. A right is a claim recognized by society. First of all, you see the social acceptability of the right is important. So when the claim of the people is accepted by the society, then it is recognized by the law also and it is incorporated in the law. So that is why Bosanquet is saying that a right is a claim recognized by society and enforced by the state. In the light of the above definitions, we can sum up that human rights are those favorable socio-economic and other conditions of life that allows us to lead a dignified life. So you see that dignified life is ensured by claiming and achieving these rights. They enable us to use our potential and develop our personalities to the fullest possible extent. Human rights are the legitimate claims and entitlements that distinguish us from the animal kingdom. A state or society cannot successfully claim to be civilized if it does not guarantee rights to its citizens. So it becomes a yardstick to judge the claim of a state whether it is a civilized state or not. After this, we are going to discuss the significance of human rights. So, the universalization of the concept of human rights is one of the greatest achievement of humankind in the 20th century. There is no doubt in it. You see, earlier it was not possible before the establishment of the United Nations to get universal acceptability for a set of rights. But thanks to the United Nations, the UN Charter and its continuous efforts, what has happened that there are certain rights which have been recognized as universal. So, therefore, it is being said that universalization of the concept of human rights is one of the greatest achievements of humankind in the 20th century. The universal human rights that we have today are the fruit of a long struggle. You see, during monarchy, rights were not there. In the authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, rights will not be available. So that is why the universal human rights that we have today are the fruit of a long struggle. People have given sacrifices. Our forefathers have given sacrifices. There have been centuries of struggles. Then only we got these rights. Human rights ensure a dignified life for all humans. And the right to life in the literature of human rights means life with dignity. You know, so a dignified life, they ensure a dignified life for all human beings. And that is why they are so important. So the right to life in the literature of human rights means life with dignity. It doesn't mean mere survival. It means life with dignity. And so, this dignity to our life is added by claiming rights and by getting rights. Human rights protect ordinary individuals from exploitation by the powerful. In fact, first of all, you will find we discussed that in the jungle, what is there? Might is right is the governing principle. In our civilized society, it cannot be the governing principle. So that is why the recognition of the rights is must. And these rights should be available to all. So that's why what has happened because of the claim of human rights that human rights protect ordinary individuals, even the weakest person in the society from exploitation by the powerful. And in fact, it criminalizes exploitation in all its forms and manifestations. So, right against exploitation is one of the important rights recognized universally. So, that is why, because of this claim of rights, what has happened that exploitation in all its forms and manifestations have been criminalized. For example, if we practice untouchability, that is a criminal offense. So, that is why you see this human rights are making our life dignified, and at the same time, they are saving people from the exploitation of those who are powerful and those who are at the helm of affairs. Human rights make all citizens a legitimate stakeholder in the power and authority of the state. If you see, for example, during the medieval period or ancient times, or you will find when the monarchies were there, or when the divine origin theory of a state was there. So, when the divine origin theory of a state was there, to obey the king was the secular as well as the religious duty of an individual. People were considered as subjects, not as citizens. and to disobey the king was just a sin according to religious law as well as according to the secular law. It was a punishable crime. So that is why people did not have rights against the king or the monarch. So that is why you will find there was movement against monarchies. So now it has been universally recognized that human rights make all citizens a legitimate stakeholder in the power and the authority of the state. So the recognition of political rights, promotion of democracy all over the world. Harold J. Lasky, an important political philosopher of the 20th century, what does he say? And he says that a state is known by the rights it maintains. What does it mean? That a state is known by the rights it maintains. When we are saying, it means that a state cannot claim to be civilized, or its claim to civility will not be accepted if it is not granting rights to its citizens. So a state, if it is indulged in the violation of the rights of its own citizens, or if it is violating the rights of other, the people living in other states, then that state's claim to civility will not be acceptable, and that claim will not be, defended. That cannot be defended on respectable grounds. So therefore, today one of the yardstick to judge the state's claim to civility is the rights enjoyed by its citizens. Human rights have inspired people to overthrow dictatorships and authoritarian regimes and resulted in great revolutions, national liberation movements, and the end of colonialism, imperialism, racism, slavery, etc. This is one of the biggest achievements of human rights movement. The people who were reeling under exploitation, under colonialism, imperialism, or dictatorial monarchies, these people, unarmed people, helpless people, they were inspired and motivated by the slogans of liberty, equality, rights, and all, dignity. And they were, when they were inspired by these slogans, they were able to overthrow the dictatorships and authoritarian regimes. And that is why the great revolutions were there, because of the recognition of these rights. The people were motivated by the claim of the rights, and that is why they brought down dictatorial monarchies, authoritarian regimes, and also it resulted in national liberation struggles in the different parts of the world, including our own country. So what was our claim? Of course, liberty, freedom, equality, rights against racial discrimination, self-rule. All these were the claims that we made. So that is why, for example, there was apartheid in South Africa. Racial discrimination was there against the black people. So the concept of equality, the idea of equality, rights, liberty, dignity, all motivated people to, launch a movement against apartheid regime in South Africa. And you'll find that apartheid regime was almost criminalized. It faced boycott from the international community. And ultimately, you'll find South Africa was able to succeed in its battle against the discrimination that was there for centuries. Human rights legitimizes the people's claim to have access to basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, health, and education. So this is also important. Now, the state has been, held responsible if there is a starvation death. So now it is the responsibility of the state that to provide these facilities, that is like food, shelter, clothing, health, and education. So that is why it is one of the important achievements of human rights movements, or the concept of human rights, that now the people claim rights against its state, and that's why the state is forced to provide this kind of rights. For example, right to food, right to shelter, right to clothing, health, and education, etc. Human rights protects the vulnerable and weaker sections of society from abuse of power holders. It is said that the power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So therefore, those who are in power, they have a tendency to try to expand their power more and more. And they also want to become dictator. They want to have power which cannot be challenged. So that is why the very idea of human rights becomes a restriction. It becomes, the very idea of human rights restricts their power, their ambition uh, to become all powerful. So that is why it protects the vulnerable and weaker sections of society from abuse of power holders. So in society, you'll find every society is not the society of equal. There are people, those who are marginalized. There are people who are living on the periphery. So those people who are peripheralized, marginalized, socially excluded, they are also saved from the exploitation of the power holders because they have a legitimate claims to certain rights. Human rights promote mutual understanding and goodwill and contribute to peace and prosperity. So, again, you see, if the human rights are protected, then the peace and the prosperity will be there in a society. Human rights organizations and activists are working hard to make our world better. They are becoming the voice of the voiceless, putting a curb on the misuse of power by the state, corporations, and influential individuals. So, the role of human rights organization when they are highlighting the plight of the farmers, for example, or if they are highlighting the plight of the workers, for example, and they are claiming certain rights for them. So, the powerful individual corporations, they are all are made to respect the rights. So, that is one of the achievements, and that is the significance of human rights. The concern for a clean and healthy environment characterizes the contemporary discourse on human rights. This is again important to understand that our planet is heating up, there is global warming and climate change, and that is why now in the contemporary discourse of human rights you will find that uh, environmental rights are being emphasized. So now it is being claimed that right to clean environment is the part and parcel of a right to life. So it means that if the people are living in an unhealthy environment, polluted environment, it means that is violation of the most basic right of all human beings, and that is right to life. So the concern for a clean and healthy environment characterizes the contemporary discourse on human rights, and this concern is important. Why? Because if nothing is done to to stop or to minimize the pace of the acceleration of global warming, then nothing, the life will not be there on this planet. So that is why that awareness, and when the environmental rights are being claimed, they are basically claimed to save our planet from destruction. So this is again important. The sustainable development and green rights are being emphasized globally. So the green movement, green peace, for example, green rights, for example, they are being emphasized. Human rights activists and organizations are also raising the voices against arms race. There are many issues, pertinent issues that are to be taken up by the human rights organizations, and that is why it has become the concern of every human rights activist today. And these are the problems like arms race, gender injustice, the death penalty, police atrocities, torture and encounters, terrorism and violence, marginalization and social exclusion. These are the challenges, these are the issues that the human rights activists and organizations are highlighting, and they are raising their voices against these challenges. In this way, they work for peace, harmony, and security and contribute to a better world. So, it cannot be denied that these organizations are making our world better. For example, Amnesty International, which got Nobel Peace Prize, because of its work in the field of human rights. You'll find International Red Cross, when the people are wounded, when the people need medical care, International Red Cross is playing a very important role. And these people, these human rights activists who are, of course, branded as incorrigible optimists as well, these human rights activists, scholars, and the highly motivated people, public spirited individuals, they are putting their lives in danger to save the life of others, and that must be appreciated. So, to conclude, we can say human rights are the fruit of a long struggle and sacrifice that we have to realize and we have to remember all the time. The United Nations has recognized the significance of the dissemination of knowledge of human rights and has maintained that it promotes understanding, and peace among people. So that is why this is another important dimension, that uh, promotion of human rights also promote peace and prosperity. Although there is no agreement among the scholars about the meaning, nature, scope, and content of human rights, it has been recognized by all that human rights are the legitimate claims of all human beings. So at least you will find consensus on this, that human rights are legitimate claims of individuals. Human rights is a dynamic concept, and its catalog is expanding with the passage of time. So there is no doubt in it that the dynamism you see, that earlier the civil and political rights were emphasized, after that economic, social, and cultural rights were emphasized, and then the third generation human right, that is group rights, right to self-determination, etc. Now the fourth generation rights are also being discussed. So that is why the human rights is a dynamic concept, and its catalog is expanding with the passage of time. The United Nations, along with several other organizations, activists, and scholars of human rights, is playing a commendable role in universalizing human rights. So, with this, we conclude our lecture on understanding human rights, that is, meaning, definition, etc., of human rights. Thank you very much.